Hi, Heidi Christensen from Genius Paradigm here. I'm here with my third installment of my education story. Last time I told you a little bit about how I was bullied when I was in first and second grade, and then again when I was in fifth, and how my family had to move in the middle of fifth grade. I left you kind of on a cliffhanger because I told you that this time I didn't have problems with being bullied by other kids, but this time it was the teachers. Well, I remember specifically in fifth grade when we moved, I was very upset. I mean, it was a huge upheaval for our family. It was really hard for all of us kids. Um, but me especially, I think. Of course, I'm a little bit biased. But anyway, it was really hard. But one of the things I was determined was that I was determined to not continue to allow the bullying to happen again. I did not want to be bullied again. I wanted to make sure that I didn't put myself into a situation where the bullying would continue. I didn't want that negative peer interaction. And so I worked hard to make sure that didn't happen. Unfortunately, the first week, as I said in my last video, the first day, my brothers and I all came home crying. And that first week, my poor mother, I mean, she still had my sister at home, and she was pregnant. Again, we found out a little bit later that it was twins. But anyway, she was pregnant, and she had these three kids who were miserable at their new school. And um, we all had these teachers that were just horrible. My teacher in particular, the first week, she knew that I was transferring in the middle of the school year and that there were problems, but she told me that because I didn't know my sevens facts, I always had a problem. Well, actually, until I taught my kids, I always had a problem with 7 times 6, 7 times 7, and 7 times 8. It was just one of those things. Well, she told me I'd have to go back to third grade the first week I was enrolled in her class. And if that wasn't bad enough, I mean, that was a huge hit to my self-esteem. It was very embarrassing that she would say that to me in front of other kids. It wasn't in front of the whole class when class was in session, thankfully. But one thing she did do is she embarrassed me. She did say something about me and my family's religious beliefs because I was exempt from one part of the class because of my religious beliefs. And so she thought that she should just tell everybody about me and my family. And that was very embarrassing, very hard to go through. Well, my brothers were also having a hard time. My brother that was closest in age to me, his teacher did something so silly. I mean, even in fifth grade, I couldn't understand it. And so even though I was deathly afraid of going to the principal's office, I decided I'd have to risk it because I just didn't understand why he would do something. I mean, this was a boy who needed to be up and running around, and because he didn't know, because he was a new kid, he went the wrong way to the playground. And so he was benched every recess and lunch for a week. Why? I mean, even in fifth grade, I didn't understand that. I was like, this makes no sense. And so I tried going to the principal and asking, to say, trying to help the situation. It's like, at least find some kind of logic in it. Even then, I needed to find the logic. And wouldn't you know, the principal was out that day. And guess who the assistant principal was? My brother's teacher. I actually had enough guts. I even look back and, I'm kind of proud of myself about this. I had enough guts to stand up to that teacher and tell him what he was, asking him why he was doing what he was doing when my brother obviously needed to run around. It didn't help the situation. I don't know if the principal ever found out about me coming. I do know my mother was in there so often that there was a note in one of our folders that she was able to see years later that said, "Mother is a troublemaker." She's very proud of that. Anyway, I'm very grateful that I only had half a year in that school. It was a hard year, a hard 6 months, but it was not the whole time. And so I went on to middle school and again was determined to make sure it was a better experience. I didn't want to have the same experience with my teachers this time. And I had some absolutely fantastic teachers. I had this one PE teacher, his name was Mr. Rushi, and I was never athletic, but Mr. Rushi always made me feel good. He made me want to do the best I could do. I think he was originally a math teacher and somehow ended up in PE, and he inspired me. He inspired me to try harder, and I was just always so grateful for him. Another really special teacher was Mrs. Holm. She was my sewing teacher. Mrs. Holm, she had me for the first time in 6th grade, and this is when we only had like 6 weeks of sewing classes, and we had to make this little pillow, and that was about it. Or maybe it was an apron, I forget. But anyway, I loved it so much, and I had been sewing for years. My mother was a big supporter of teaching me how to sew, and so I didn't want to take one of the other classes they offered, so I advocated for myself, and I went in and I was able to take sewing a second time. And Mrs. Holm, she wanted to support me too. She let me make something other than just the standard thing that everybody else was making. She let me go farther and taught me more. I ended up in 7th grade taking her class again, and then in 8th grade I took her class again, sewing again, and then I also taught I was like a student teacher for the 6th grade class that year, and I loved it. I loved sewing. She pushed me. She encouraged me. She wanted me to reach for my potential. She saw that I could do more, and so she expected more. And I've always been so grateful for her. And I ended up going on and getting my first 2 degrees in clothing and textiles because of her. And I tried harder because of her and Mr. Rushi. And I'm just so grateful for those teachers. They totally made up for those teachers in that other school that cut us down and made me feel small. These teachers made me feel wonderful, and I'll always be so grateful for. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. And if you would like more information, please go to geniusparadigm.com and you can sign up for my newsletters. I send them out monthly and they give you more information. When you sign up, you'll also get a free lesson plan that will give you some information on how to help find your genius and also help your kids or those that you love find their genius too. So anyway, thank you for listening to my education story. I'll be back in a couple weeks with another one.